You don't expect it to come from a backup quarterback. Really crazy stuff. 888-546-4620. Your calls and texts are always appreciated. 82945, a couple of idiotic texts, but that's par for the course here in this market. But the Buccaneers, the NFL preseason is finally over, folks. And now it's time for the real season. Big decisions have to be made. What will the Buccaneers' final 53 look like? That and a lot of NFL stuff, that is the theme of our opening drive.
Start the engine. Gas to the floor. Here's the opening drive.
The opening drive is presented by Mark Spain Real Estate. Sell your home with a guaranteed offer from Mark Spain Real Estate and receive the strongest cash offer in the industry. Go to markspain.com to get a guaranteed offer on your home today. That is markspain.com and start packing. Well, needless to say, a lot of youngsters with hopes and dreams of being on an NFL roster are packing as we speak. And the Buccaneers cutting a number of guys over the weekend. I was very dismayed to see our guy, number 60, now we know. Xavier Delgado, the undrafted free agent out of Missouri, the guard, the 24-year-old. He was cut over the weekend. Just as I was getting to know him on a more intimate level, poof, he's gone.
I will say, though, Tom, maybe fortunately, since you've talked about him so much on the show, maybe other teams have taken notice.
Well, Brian Baldinger highlighted him on one of Baldy's film reviews from a couple of weeks ago. Look, I think the Bucs will bring him back on the practice squad. I think he's definitely a practice squad candidate. You have 16 spots for the practice squad, 17 if you include, like, the international player. So there might be some room for him. And, you know, he put a couple of things out there on tape, and offensive linemen are always at a premium. But I'm hoping that, the Buccaneers have him back at some point, you know.
Come on, get out of here!
In the meantime, they told him to pack your stuff. Oh, gosh. You can stay, but you can't stay here anymore is what they told him, unfortunately. Not at this time, Todd Bowles said. Not at this time. I'm going to say this one time. I want you out of this facility before I call security. I've been told that a time or two in my life. Well, you know, these are human beings, too. Xavier Delgado is a human being. So a lot of these other guys that are getting cut. These are people. These are people with hopes and dreams and aspirations. They aspire to be something in life. Unlike some of you people on the text platform, you aspire to be bums. You aspire to be losers. You don't aspire, you just are. But Xavier Delgado and some of these other kids, you know, they're getting their hearts broken here. There is a human element to all of this. The transaction wire is more than Bucs have released Xavier Delgado, this guy, that guy, the other guy. It's a whole lot more involved than that. And these are guys that are hoping to fulfill their dream of playing in the NFL or professional football. I heard Todd Bowles, and I saw his speech to his team after the game on Friday night. He said, look, we got some tough decisions to make, and some of you, unfortunately, you might have been putting on that uniform for the last time. But it doesn't mean that your dream is shattered. There are some examples, not many, but some examples. I mean, Kurt Warner was bagging groceries once upon a time. And then he kept working at his dream, went to NFL Europe. The next thing you know, he ends up, on somebody's roster with the Rams. And then Trent Green gets hurt in the preseason. And then, boom, his moment of opportunity arises. He takes it, he runs with it, and he has a Hall of Fame career. Engineered the greatest show on turf, and away he went. And then he went to Arizona. He probably should have won another Super Bowl with the Arizona Cardinals. I was in the building that night. Arizona-Pittsburgh in the Super Bowl here. And when he hit Larry Fitzgerald over the middle, and I was standing with a bunch of Cardinals fans, they were unbelievably over the moon. They thought they had just won the Super Bowl. Then, of course, Ben Roethlisberger goes right down the field. Santonio Holmes in the corner of the end zone. And their dream was shattered, and Mike Tomlin gets his Super Bowl ring. Fast forward 17 years later, Mike Tomlin still doesn't have a losing record. That might change this year, though. The Pittsburgh Steelers are contemplating the starting quarterback, and I don't think either of those guys can play. Not at a serious level. Not Russell Wilson, not Justin Fields. I think the Steelers may have a losing record this year, but, that's the beauty of the NFL. You might think one thing, and then all of a sudden, the next thing you know, boom. Teams always come out of nowhere, and they surprise. Last year, I didn't expect much out of the Bucs. I had them at 5 or 6 wins. I just thought that, first time ever, offensive coordinator, Dave Canales, I'm going to be learning on the job. I was like, wow, okay, that's a little bit of a red flag. They lost so much talent, so much veteran people. They had a bunch of young guys on the roster. Baker Mayfield, cast off by a couple of different teams. He signs here for dirt cheap when it comes to quarterbacks. And then, the next thing you know, he has himself an incredible bounce-back year. He resuscitates his career here in Tampa Bay, and now the recipient of a 3-year, $100 million extension. And you saw him on the field on Friday night. That first drive was impressive. Now, context is everything. Did Miami play any of their starters? Not at this time, no, is what Todd Bowles would say.
Not at this time.
No, they didn't. But you like the flow of the offense. The starters were in there. Boom, boom, boom. 7 plays, 70 yards. They did what they had to do. And you saw some concepts. Liam Cohen, the new offensive coordinator, he peeled back the curtain just a little bit. And you got a glimpse, a little taste, if you will, of what this offense might look like. I love the pre-snap motions. There are so many ways where you can, flip the cover of the defense and find out what coverage they're in. And putting a guy in motion, you find that out. If somebody's following that guy, they're playing zone. If somebody is following him, they're playing man. There's so many things you can do to dictate to a defense and keep them on their heels. And you saw a little bit of that on Friday night. The throwback screen to Rachaad White, that was a beautiful play. And it was beautifully executed. Jalen McMillan makes this incredible catch down the sideline. Gets the elbow down. Beautiful catch. He earned his way, and that was really, for the most part, what you saw of Jalen McMillan this entire summer. I think he's going to be an immediate impact contributor for this Buccaneer team. And then Rachaad White finishes it off with that touchdown run, and then right away, boy, I'm on next like, all right, touchdown Buccaneer, touchdown, fire the cannons, get them going, and now get them off the field, get the starters out of there, which the Buccaneers ended up doing. So the opening drive was impressive. You like what you saw, and I like the concepts and the structure of this offense. And, the offensive line, I think, is going to be improved. I have a question about Brendeson at left guard. We'll see once the real season begins, and he's going to be tested right away along with Graham Barton, the rookie starting center, in less than 2 weeks. In 13 days, the Washington Commandos come into town, and their defensive line, especially those guys on the inside, they will test you now. Graham Barton will get tested. Ben Brendeson will get tested. Cody Mauch, who was down last year, and then he showed some signs toward the end of the year, he's going to get tested too by Jonathan Allen and Deron Payne. So we're 13 days away from actually talking about a real game with real ramifications, with, real players and starters on both sides. None of this preseason nonsense. But before we do that, the Buccaneers have to figure out what their final 53 will look like. And Todd Bowles talked about it on Saturday morning. He had a conference call with the media, and he talked about the logistics of handling these cuts on what that looks like.
We'll process it today. I think probably starting tomorrow. Then into Monday, we'll start making those decisions.
Yeah, and they have made some decisions, and they have let go of a number of players already, including our guy Xavier Delgado, who maybe gets back to the practice squad. We'll see. But I think they have a general idea as to what the final 53 is going to look like. Wide receiver, you saw a couple of guys step forward on the game Friday night, and we know what the top 4 looks like: Evans, Godwin, McMillan, fantastic, the third-round rookie, Trey Palmer. And now for wide receivers 5 and 6, you're seeing a couple of guys that might have a chance to make this team. Cody Thompson had 7 catches on Friday night. You also look at some other guys like Cam Johnson. He had 3 catches. He also had a couple of rushes. That's a guy that was gaining a lot of attention toward the end of training camp. And Todd Bowles knows that, look, there's some decisions that have to be made at that wide receiver position.
There's some decisions to be made. Got a good look at Cam last night for the first time. He did some really good things, running and catching with the football. Cody's been consistent all preseason. Miller's shown some things as well. So, those 3 guys really got some decisions to make there.
Yeah, Ryan Miller is the guy that he was talking about, but it certainly appears that wide receivers 5 and 6 are going to be Cam Johnson and Cody Thompson. However, I will caution you that once these cuts come down and you have to get down to 53 by 4 o'clock tomorrow, I think the Buccaneers will have an eye out and looking for maybe a veteran wide receiver. Now, they thought Sterling Shepard would be that guy, but we get word right before the show that the Buccaneers have indeed released Sterling Shepard, and they could bring him back to the practice squad. That's something that bears watching. He was not healthy for the most part this summer. He didn't look like the Sterling Shepard that had some productive years with the Giants from a few years ago. There have been some injuries, too. I know that was Baker's guy from Oklahoma, so I think the Bucs tried to appease Baker by bringing in one of his guys, but it just wasn't working out. But I think wide receivers 5 and 6 is going to be, a position that the Buccaneers may look for outside help on. The other position that I think the Buccaneers really need to take a serious look at is along the defensive line. And I'm a little nervous about the depth that they have at that position. Because in my mind, there are 2 legitimate starters on this team. And that would be Vita Vea, who, by the way, trucked that poor center, Jack Driscoll, whatever his name was. I'm sure they must have had a heck of a time in that film study the day after down in Miami. But Vita Vea and Kalijah Kancey are the only 2 legitimate players you really have along that defensive line. That's it. If one of those guys goes down for weeks at a time, the Bucs are in serious trouble. Now, there aren't too many guys walking the streets that can come in and help them, but I think the Buccaneers will have a keen eye out there, and they should. Jason Light should be out there with John Spytek and the rest of his front office. Once these final cuts come down, the Buccaneers have better be eyeballing a defensive lineman or 2. They need to bring in a body there. Will Golston at this stage of his career is more of a rotational guy. C.J. Brewer might make this team. Logan Hall, he got a little bit bigger. Todd Bowles is trying to push him to get to the next level, but there's some inconsistent play there. The Bucs really need to address their defensive line if they can through the final cutdowns, bring in some fresh bodies, because that's a position in my mind that has me concerned. You only have 2 legitimate guys, and if one of them gets hurt for an extended period of time, I think the Bucs are in a lot of trouble. 888-546-4620. Text at 82945. So a lot of Bucs talk, a lot of NFL talk throughout this 4-hour sports talk extravaganza. We'll talk Rays. They're in Seattle tonight. Brian Anderson at 4:05. The good, the bad, and the ugly in the 5 o'clock hour, as we'll take you all the way up until 7 o'clock. So what positions have you concerned about this Buccaneer team? We'll take your calls and texts. More Buccaneer and NFL talk upcoming. Todd Bowles is not happy at all with one starter. What could that mean? Plus, another big deal handed out in the NFL just minutes ago. We're going to get into that, too. That is next here on The Drive.
Today, Tampa Bay Rays baseball is live on WDAE.
Down the line and into the corner. Turns and looks. Go!
Don't miss any of the action as the Rays take on the Seattle